So, here I am. I never thought I'd be the guy writing his life story on Reddit, especially about something this messed up, but life has a way of turning everything upside down, doesn't it? I've been married to Jessica for 8 years. 8 freaking years. We met back in college. She was the wild, carefree girl who lit up every room she walked into. Me? I was the laid-back, simple guy, steady as a rock. People used to say we balanced each other out, and for a long time, I believed that. We had the kind of relationship that looked great from the outside. Perfect house, decent jobs, and friends who were always jealous of how in sync we seemed. But I guess you never really know what's going on behind closed doors. I won't pretend like we didn't have issues. I mean, who doesn't? But it was this past year when things really started to shift. It's hard to explain. It wasn't one big event, just little things that began to pile up. Jessica started acting distant, like I wasn't even there. The first few times I noticed it, I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed from work or just needed space, I thought. But the distance didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Our sex life, which had always been solid, dried up almost overnight. We went from being intimate a few times a week to barely touching each other. She kept telling me she was too tired or too stressed, but she wasn't too tired to go out with her new work friends until midnight every other night. I started feeling like a ghost in my own marriage, and the more I tried to bring it up, the more she pushed me away. Still, I convinced myself that it was just a rough patch. I kept thinking, this is normal, right? Every couple goes through phases like this. I didn't know it at the time, but I was wrong. So wrong looking back, the signs were there, plain as day. But when you love someone, you blind yourself to the truth. The late nights out with her work friends were one thing, but it wasn't just that. There were smaller, subtler signs too, like how she'd suddenly become glued to her phone. She never used to be the kind of person who cared about texting or social media, but now, it was like her phone was her lifeline. And whenever I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd give me this look, annoyed, almost like I was bothering her. She'd roll her eyes and say something like, "God, John, it's just work stuff. Chill out." I wanted to trust her. I really did. I kept telling myself that this was just a rough patch, that things would go back to normal once she got through whatever she was dealing with. But it wasn't getting better. If anything, it was getting worse. She'd come home late, smelling like alcohol and perfume that definitely wasn't hers. She stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings, stopped asking me about my day. She was pulling away, and I felt like I was losing her. And then came the retreat, the one weekend that changed everything. Jessica had this work retreat coming up, and I remember it so clearly because it felt off from the start. We'd had plans that weekend, just a simple getaway, nothing major. But suddenly, she told me she had to cancel because of this last-minute retreat with her new job. She said it was mandatory, that her boss was really pushing team bonding or some bullshit like that. At the time, I didn't think too much of it, even though I was disappointed. I figured, hey, work is work. But then, she started acting strange. She went out and bought new clothes, stuff she never wears. Sexy lingerie. That's when the alarm bells really started going off in my head. I asked her about it, trying to keep my tone casual, but she snapped at me, said she wanted to feel good about herself, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I felt like I was losing my mind. I tried to talk to her the night before she left, asked if everything was okay between us, and she got defensive, real defensive. "Why are you being so paranoid? I've told you a million times, it's just a work thing," she shouted like I was the crazy one for asking. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. After she left for the retreat, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. I spent most of that night pacing around the house, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. My mind was racing with all kinds of thoughts. Was she lying? Was I just being insecure? Was this all in my head? By 2 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I broke down and did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. I felt sick to my stomach even touching it, but I had to know the truth. I logged into her email, and that's when I found it. There was an email thread with a guy named Nick. I'll never forget the subject line. "Last weekend was amazing." I opened the thread, and the first line I read made me want to throw up. "I can't wait to see you again, babe. I miss the way you feel in my arms." I was shaking. My whole body went numb. I scrolled down and saw months of emails. Months of her telling him how much she missed him, how their time together was the highlight of her week. And him? He responded with stuff like, "I love you, Jessica. I can't wait to be with you again." That was it. I knew. I knew she wasn't at a work retreat. She was with him. That I don't even remember how long I sat there, staring at the screen, but it felt like my world had ended. Everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, my life, it was all a lie. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even make a sound. I just sat there in silence, feeling like my chest had been ripped open. I couldn't believe it. Jessica, my Jessica, was cheating on me. She'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. I kept rereading those emails, hoping I was misunderstanding something. But no, it was all there, black and white. She was fucking some guy named Nick, and I had been too blind to see it. Then the anger hit. It hit me like a tidal wave. I wanted to destroy something. I wanted to punch a hole in the wall. I wanted to find this Nick guy and beat the living hell out of him. But more than anything, I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream in her face, ask her how she could do this to me. But I didn't. I needed to plan. I needed to confront her in person. And she wasn't coming back until Sunday. Those 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, were the longest, most painful days of my life. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was her with him, their bodies tangled up in some cheap hotel bed. I imagined him touching her, kissing her, doing all the things she used to do with me. The thoughts were torturous. Part of me wanted to call her, to confront her over the phone, but I knew I had to see her face when I did it. I needed to see her reaction, needed to hear her try to lie to me again. So, I waited. I waited, and I stewed in my anger, my heartbreak, my disbelief. When she finally came home Sunday evening, she had this carefree smile on her face, like everything was normal. Like she hadn't just spent the weekend with another man. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she was exhausted from the retreat, and headed for the shower. That was it. I couldn't wait any longer. When Jessica came out of the shower, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the laptop open in front of me. I had the emails pulled up, ready for her to see. She walked in, drying her hair with a towel, and when she saw the look on my face, she knew. She knew something was wrong. "What's going on, John?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but there was a nervous edge to her voice. I didn't say anything at first. I just turned the laptop around and slid it across the table toward her. She looked down at the screen, and for a split second, her face went pale. But then, just as quickly, her expression changed, her eyes went cold, and she set her jaw like she was ready for a fight. "I was going to tell you," she said, her voice flat and motionless. That's when I lost it. "You were going to tell me?" I shouted, my voice shaking with rage. "You've been lying to me for months, and now you're saying you were just going to tell me like it was nothing?" She didn't flinch. She just stood there, arms crossed, like she was the one who was mad. "Look, it's not what you think," she said. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not what I think. How the hell else am I supposed to take it? I read the emails. I knew everything. She had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to me every day, and now she was standing there, acting like she was the victim. "It didn't mean anything," she continued, her voice calm, like she was explaining a minor inconvenience. "It was just a fling. It's not serious." That's when I snapped. "Oh, it's not serious?" I yelled, throwing the laptop across the room. It hit the wall with a sickening thud, but I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the pain I was feeling. "Then why the fuck did you say you loved him, huh? Why did you lie to me for months? Cancel plans with me. Spend weekends with him if it didn't mean anything?" Jessica sighed, like I was overreacting. "John, calm down. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. I told you I was going to tell you." That was when she hit me with the real blow. "I'm sorry you feel this way," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "But honestly, maybe if you hadn't been so distant, if you'd paid more attention to me, this wouldn't have happened." I stood there, stunned, like I'd just been slapped in the face. That I stood there, frozen, trying to process what she had just said. She was blaming me? After everything she did, after all the lies and sneaking around, she had the audacity to turn this back on me? My chest tightened, and I could feel the anger rising inside me again, but this time it was mixed with a deep, crushing sadness. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You cheated on me. You lied to me for months. And now you're saying it's my fault. Jessica rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. I'm not saying it's your fault, John. I'm just saying that maybe if you had been more present, if you had made me feel special, things wouldn't have gotten to this point. Her words cut deep. I'd spent so much of our marriage trying to be there for her, trying to make her happy. I wasn't perfect, I knew that, but I never once thought about stepping outside of our relationship. I never lied to her. I never betrayed her. And now she was telling me that I was the reason she had an affair? The weight of her words pressed down on me, suffocating me. I felt helpless, like I was sinking in quicksand, and there was no way out. How had things gotten so messed up? I couldn't hold it in anymore. All the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, it came crashing down on me all at once. I sat down at the kitchen table, my head in my hands, and I just started sobbing. I didn't care if she saw me cry. I didn't care about anything anymore. My whole world had fallen apart, and I didn't know how to put it back together. Jessica didn't say anything. She just stood there, arms crossed, watching me break down like I was some pathetic loser. It was like she didn't even care about what she had done, like my pain was an inconvenience to her. I don't know what you want me to say, she said after a few minutes of silence. I'm sorry, okay? But what's done is done. We can't change the past. I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face, and I realized in that moment that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had married, was gone. Or maybe she had never been there to begin with. Maybe I had been blind to who she really was all along. After the confrontation, things between us got worse, much worse. I tried to talk to her, tried to figure out where we stood, but every conversation ended in a fight. She refused to take responsibility for what she had done, and the more I tried to get her to understand how much she had hurt me, the more distant she became. One night, about a week after I found out about the affair, we had another argument. It was the same thing, her blaming me trying to make sense of it all. But this time something clicked in my head. I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare, hoping that one day she'd feel remorse, hoping that we could somehow fix what was broken. She didn't want to fix it. She didn't care. I was done. The next morning, I told her I wanted a divorce. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or try to make her love me again. I deserved better than that. I deserved someone who valued me, someone who wouldn't lie to me or make me feel like I was an afterthought. Jessica barely reacted. She just shrugged and said, "If that's what you want." That was it. No tears, no apologies. Just a cold, indifferent shrug. That was all I needed to know that I was making the right decision. The process of moving out was brutal. Not because of the logistics, splitting up our stuff was surprisingly easy, but because of the emotional weight of it all. Every time I packed a box, I felt like I was packing away pieces of our life together, pieces of myself that I'd never get back. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. It was nothing like the home we had shared, bare, with only the essentials. But in a way, it felt like a fresh start. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells around Jessica. I wasn't waiting for her to come home, wondering if she had been with him. I was on my own, and it felt freeing, even though it hurt like hell. The first few weeks were rough. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, reach over to where she used to be, and feel the emptiness beside me. I'd catch myself staring at old photos of us, wondering where things had gone wrong, wondering if I could have done something, anything to prevent this from happening. But then I'd remember the emails, the lies, the way she had looked at me without an ounce of regret, and the sadness would turn to anger. I didn't deserve what she had done to me. I didn't deserve to be treated like I was disposable. Slowly, day by day, I started to put the pieces of myself back together. The emotional healing process wasn't linear. Some days, I felt like I was making progress, like I was finally moving on from the betrayal. I'd focus on myself, dive into work, hang out with friends, try to distract myself. But other days, the weight of it all would hit me like a truck. I'd be doing something as simple as grocery shopping, and out of nowhere, a wave of sadness would wash over me. I'd see a couple laughing together or holding hands, and I'd feel this deep ache in my chest. I missed the idea of what Jessica and I used to be, the closeness, the intimacy, the comfort of knowing someone had your back. But then I'd remind myself that it was all an illusion. Jessica had never had my back. She had lied to me, betrayed me, and blamed me for her affair. And as much as it hurt, I knew that I was better off without her. The anger came and went in waves, too. Some days, I wanted to confront her again, to scream at her for everything she had done to me. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. She wasn't worth my energy anymore. The hardest part was letting go of the what-ifs. What if I had been a better husband? What if I had noticed the signs earlier? What if I had fought harder for our marriage? But the truth was, none of that mattered. Jessica had made her choice, and I had to make mine. Now, months later, I'm in a much better place. It wasn't easy getting here, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. I've been focusing on rebuilding my life, reconnecting with friends, taking up hobbies I've forgotten about, and most importantly, learning to trust myself again. If I could give any advice to someone in a similar situation, it would be this: trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. I spent months telling myself that everything was fine, that Jessica was just going through a phase. I let her lies cloud my judgment because I didn't want to face the truth. But deep down, I knew. I knew something was wrong, and I wish I had trusted myself sooner. And to anyone who finds themselves in a relationship like this, don't be afraid to walk away. It's hard. God, is it hard? But sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do for yourself. You deserve to be with someone who values you, who respects you, and who doesn't treat you like an option. You deserve better than someone who lies to your face and blames you for their mistakes. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel like the end of the world. But I promise you'll get through it. One day, you'll wake up and realize that you're stronger than you ever thought you could be. And you'll be okay.